Hello and welcome to The Agenda on Politics Social. I'm Graham Hughes and I'm joined, as always, by Phil Morehouse of A Different Bias fame. How you doing, Phil?
I'm all right, thank you. You're sounding a bit better now, anyway.
I'm a bit better. I'm still not 100%, but I'm getting there. I'm getting back there. So a big shout out to everyone in the chat. We've got Alec in there. We've got Johan. We've got Katrina, Roger, Hayhun, Phil as well. Different Phil. We've got Benjamin in there, Captain Bart Roberts, Emma Price, Gallifrey Event. Hello, everybody. If you'd like to join our friendly chat, please just subscribe to the channel. That's all you need to do. Hit the subscribe button and wait for 1 minute, and then you'll be able to join us. We're a very friendly bunch. We don't tolerate any trolling or any of that nonsense. So please don't even try, because you will get banned off the channel. Well, you can still watch it. You just won't be able to comment anymore. Anyway, Phil. So there was a report in the Times today. I don't know if you saw it, and it was about what motivated the rioters who obviously.
Yeah, there's a lot of this going about. I mean, there'll need to be a proper review at some point. In reality, there's several different motivations. It's like Brexit. There's lots of different groups who had lots of different motivations, and it's easy to pick on some of the more obvious ones. And everyone in the media will want to try and emphasize the aspect of it which suits some particular agenda of theirs, and we're maybe no different in some ways. It is.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the article, and it's basically the Times has sat in court, spoken to defendants' families, and trawled through social media to find out why they joined the riots. And essentially, all of them: Tommy Robinson, reform voting, Nigel Farage. These names come up time and time again.
Yeah.
On there was a guy called Dylan Carey. He's 26. He's jailed after going with his pregnant girlfriend to Southport for a riot, where he was an active and persistent participant. And photos on social media showed that a few days earlier he went to the rally organised by Tommy Robinson, Tommy 10 Names, and John Laxley Lennon in
Before
London.
He pissed off out of the country.
Yeah, he was photographed at the rally with an England flag around his neck. And on the morning of the riot, Tommy Robinson told his nearly 1 million followers on Twitter, a platform that he was deplatformed from because he's an extremist and also he's a criminal. Musk allowed him back on. And he tweeted that morning that the police were gaslighting the public about the Southport killer. And the barrister for this guy, who admitted the charge, blamed his presence at the rally for his transition from a hard-working family man to sitting before the Liverpool Crown Court. And he's a regular poster on Facebook of conspiracy theories, such as two-tier policing. He shared his belief in the anti-vax movement and fears globalist elites are seeking the Great Reset. He also shared false claims that the Southport attacker was an immigrant. So, I mean, I don't think that any of this can be seen in isolation, but it is like a package deal, isn't it? When you find people who are susceptible to this kind of bullshit, they'll fall for the anti-vax stuff.
Yeah.
They'll fall for the migrants are the cause of all your problems stuff. And they'll fall for these charismatic millionaires and billionaire charlatans who just want to sell them snake oil. I just want to see the world burn. And they just delight in ripping families apart, and putting working class people in jail.
They make money out of it. Even if they don't delight in it, they don't care. And they're taking advantage of the fact that ultimately, and you get a lot of this in lots of aspects of politics, and not everyone who falls into one of these like echo chambers goes around tearing the country up, but it comes ultimately, and again, this is why politics and the media are really to blame, because it comes when what happens when people cannot trust politicians or they cannot trust the media. They still want news. They still want to feel that they know what's going on in the world. What do you do if you cannot trust mainstream media, or you cannot trust politicians? If you cannot trust the establishment if you think they're lying to you, and actually in this country often they are, you inevitably go to sources of information. Oh, this is the real stuff. They're telling me the truth. And sometimes that will be the case, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just people who are saying something that is easy for you to believe and making out that there's this really simple solution to the problem, and that the establishment doesn't want it. And so you the media are all like clutching their pearls over this thing, and they'll be correctly identifying some of these snake oil salesmen, as you say, who are peddling these lies, but they're not taking responsibility themselves for the fact that the reason why people have turned to these charlatans, these grifters, is because they have not been providing accurate information to people. They are part of the problem.
Yeah. I think as also, I mean, like with drugs, you have gateway drugs. So smoking is the big one. I have friends who worked at the Home Office at the time, with working to get people off drugs. Under the last Labour government before this one, and he would always say smoking was the biggest gateway drug. People talk about cannabis, but he said the biggest one would be smoking. Once you start smoking, you can start down that path. So it's best not to start smoking, essentially. Even though he smoked, somewhat ironically. But I would say that a gateway drug towards this kind of right-wing hysteria, transphobia, which Sarah White has mentioned. You get a lot of people on the left who believe themselves to be progressive feminists who have now jumped on the transphobia bandwagon, and also anti-vaxxers. And you get this where, especially when it's a delicate situation in which someone's got a child and that child has got ill, and they're looking for answers of like, why has my child got ill? And it's very difficult in situations like this for people to be able to take a step back and go, well, let's look at it in the whole. Was it Queen Anne, who had 18 children or 18 pregnancies, and not one of her kids survived past 5 years old. Like, that was 200 years ago.
Yeah.
It was normal for most childbirths to result in the death of the baby, or, sorry, trigger warning here, death of the baby or the mother. That was very common. That's why you had such big families back then, because it was, the law of probability, law of averages, whatever you call it. You'll probably have the proper mathematical name for it, Phil. But you have as many kids as possible, because not all of them are going to make it to adulthood. Now it's
I would also say contraception wasn't that advanced either, and people get a bit horny, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that's true. But also, they thought they won't, they might not make it to childhood. Now, make it to adulthood. Now it is an absolute given that all children must make it to adulthood, and if they don't, then grieving parents who are preyed upon by snake oil salesmen will come along and say, this is the reason why your child passed away, or why your child is ill, if they're still with us. And that is an easy grift for them, lots of money to make. And vaccinating your kids is a proactive thing that you have to do. It doesn't automatically get done. Baby doesn't come out and they get injected. You've got to take your baby to get vaccinated. And it's traumatic for some parents. It's traumatic, especially if you yourself are averse to needles. It feels like you're doing something to your child rather than what not getting vaccinated is doing, which is actually doing something, because you're not protecting them against these childhood diseases.
Have increases in the likes of measles and mumps now because of Wakefield's nonsense about vaccines will make your child autistic.
Yeah.
Which was a study I used to do when I taught statistics some years ago. We used to actually go through what it did. I could teach to 16-year-olds how it was arrant nonsense. So sometimes you might imagine, he came with this really cunning, thing, and it was just a simple slip that you'd need to be some Nobel Prize winning physicist to spot. And it's like, no, I could teach 16-year-olds who had like a grade C in GCSE how it was all complete nonsense. It's that easy to show how any sort of basic analysis of the data was bollocks. But again, what did the media? And I remember, so this is at the time, this was a long time ago, I used to actually watch television, and I used to be a big fan of Channel 4 News. I thought they were one of the ones that would do things. And I was utterly appalled that they put out like a phone-in survey about the MMR vaccine at the time. It says, do you think you should be forced to give your child the MMR vaccine, or do you think you should have a choice? And it's a bit like, you're leaning people, you're not asking people if they think the MMR is a good thing. You're just asking people, like, you could change it to £1 million. Do you think you should be forced to have £1 million or have the choice? People will still just as likely say, well, I'll have the choice. I'll still have the £1 million, but choice is better than like enforcement. So it was a really bad question and what I would call the decent media were really feeding this. And it has now resulted in a lot of people who didn't get their children vaccinated, and now some of these diseases, which sort of went away, are now back, and it's killing children.
It's killing children. There's been a number of children who have died of whooping cough, which was mentioned in the chat there, in just the last 6 months. And some children can't be vaccinated for various reasons. They might have an allergic reaction, or a sibling who had an allergic reaction. And they rely on herd immunity, which doesn't come about by everyone getting a virus. It comes about by everyone getting vaccinated. Because the virus just can't be transmitted from person to person effectively enough. What was it called? We heard this term a lot during COVID, didn't we? The efficacy. Great word. Of the vaccination. But also, I mean, like, I always got my back up about people who were anti-vax, because it winds me up, the idea that the likes of Wakefield, who, you know, should go to jail for a long time for what he's done, is the good guy. And the people who work for charities working in Central Asia, Central Africa, and in South America, who go out there, put their own lives on the line to deliver vaccines to children in remote villages, and they're the bad guys.
Yeah,
you know, that because they want to give learning difficulties to children, and that thing of, like, parents who think it would be worse for their child to have autism or be autistic than it would for them to die of measles. And it's like, how do you make that judgment call? I don't know. We had a super chat there. Thank you very much. Oh, that was from Alec. Yeah, thank you. Don't forget whooping cough. Thank you very much for that. Alec, I will not forget about it. Just mentioned it. There was a campaign in Australia a few years ago. There was a little girl called Riley Hughes who died of whooping cough, who couldn't be vaccinated, and her parents led a nationwide campaign to educate people in vaccinations. Because if we don't educate people in this stuff, we leave a void for the snake oil salesman to come in. Now, I was going to mention another gateway drug, although someone just said there's no such thing as a gateway drug. Well, exactly, it's smoking. The Tories, and they're incessantly going on about immigration every day.
Weird one today. I've completely changed my schedule for my second video today, because I had a complete double take. Because Priti Patel apparently has been on GB News, and would you believe this? She seems to be talking up immigration. So here's a couple of talking points that you or I might bring up when they're going on about immigration. First of all, she said it was lazy to sort of characterize net migration as being too high under the Tories. It's like, so it got up to like literally record levels by some distance. And she said, oh, it wasn't that much. But more to the point, she was given specific example, because this is what we want to do, isn't it? When when people say about immigration, we want to say, okay, so let's think this through. So she was doing some of that. She was saying, for example, so after the pandemic, the NHS, we had the shortages before the pandemic. The Tories keep trying to talk about the pandemic, but nonetheless, the pandemic certainly made things worse. So we had this shortage of doctors and nurses in the NHS.
Yeah.
And she said, ask your viewers, ask your listeners, knock on their doors and ask them, do they want us to get more doctors and nurses into the NHS? Do they want us to bring more doctors and nurses into the country in order to serve in the NHS? And they will say yes, she said. And I would say, oh, yes, they would as well. If you say to people, and we know this actually from recent polling, but if you say to people, even those who have these concerns about immigration, should we stop bringing doctors and nurses into the country to staff the NHS then? They will say, no, we don't, Right. And she also said another thing. She said about and this was relevant to the pandemic.
I just want to stop you there, because Fax is saying, wait, Patel said that.
Yes.
Patel, yes. Priti Patel.
On GB News.
On GB News.
Today. She said...
Should bring the clip on.
Well, I haven't looked at the clip. I've only seen the report in The Guardian. I don't actually sully myself with GB News personally. And you have to draw your line somewhere.
I think Max has done something. Look, check out Max's channel.
The other one was about, with the pandemic, the impact on education. It said, and what we were going to do. So all of a sudden we had, because this is what part of fed that record increase. Lots of international students, even in this country, had deferred their university education. So that meant we had this sudden influx of students going to university from other countries as well, who'd come who weren't able to come here during the years of COVID, but wanted to study at British University. So you had like a bumper crop over the next few years. And she's saying what we were supposed to do, tell them not to come here. And she was saying as if it's ridiculous. And yet that's what her own
That's what she did.
That's what
she
did.
was Home Secretary.
She didn't.
Oh,
James Cleverly did last year.
Okay.
When he said about dependence, he said, you know, they've blocked dependence. It's something Labour have stuck with as well, because they obviously think it's too much of a political hot potato at the moment. So we've got this situation now, and surprise, surprise, there's been a massive reduction in not just people wanting to come over here to work in the NHS or the care sector, but people wanting to study here as well, because we're saying you can't bring your life partner who will work.
Yeah.
Well, they're not dependents as in will get benefits. Well, again, the point that cannot be emphasized enough is immigrants do not get benefits.
This is a really good point about immigration going off a cliff because people aren't coming here because they can't bring their dependents. And it's like you being offered a job in Dubai and being told that you can't bring your fiance, or you can't bring your kids. And you're like, well, I'm not going to take it then, am I? I'm going to stay here because I don't want to be away from my family for that long. But I mean, I think that for the Tory politicians who brought this in, they were probably in boarding schools from the age of 8. Yeah. So, I mean, they don't really understand what a family is or how they're supposed to work. It's just fobbed off to nanny and then the posh school for them to grow up there. But yeah, I think that there's a positive case to be made for immigration. What is the problem with immigration? And
I just didn't put money on Priti Patel making it.
Yeah, true. But as in the chat, Sarah's just said, she's trying to reposition the Conservatives out of the dead end they're in. I think you're absolutely right on that, Sarah. Bang on the money. And Sfax is saying, honestly, how dare she have the nerve to say such things after doing groundwork for most of the current Tory migration belly aching.
It's absolutely incredible what she's actually done during the leadership contest. It really baffles me. During the riots, there she was effectively defending Black Lives Matter protesters. Yeah. Because they would say, oh, well, about the difference in police with BLM and these other guys. And she was saying, yeah, they basically went out onto the street and protested. Yeah. All they really did was block a street. That's not the
Whereas the rioters literally rioted.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
burned down Citizens Advice Bureau, a library, and they were trying to burn down a hotel with women and children in it. Yeah. So yeah, a bit of a difference. Two-tier policing, Phil. Someone got caught shoplifting, didn't get as big a sentence, right, as someone who got caught for murder. That's two-tier policing. That is, Phil.
Well, that's the problem now with this term two-tier policing. It now makes it all but impossible, actually, probably impossible, for the government to talk about. I don't know whether they would have done anyway, but to talk about the actual two-tier policing that exists. It now makes it more difficult. You're going to need some clear daylight before. It doesn't mean to say the rest of us can stop, but it does mean because the government have had to shut you. And that's the nefarious way these people work as well. It's like, it's like the Nazi thing, you sort of accuse the other side of that which you are guilty. So two-tier policing does exist. Might be actually three-tier policing, depending on how you look at it. Yeah. But it does exist. We literally had, before these riots, we had, and it was not just the Met. The Met, we know there's been report after report saying how institutionally bigoted in every way they seem to be. Yeah. I don't know that they're institutionally transphobic at the moment. That may be one they're still to tick that box. I'm not sure. But certainly misogynistic and racist. And, another report's just come out recently about a whole string of other failure. Well, not other, but continuing failures as well. The whole thing just needs chucking in the bin. But even other police forces, we literally had the news, Manchester police officer kicking a black guy, effectively, or a person of colour, who was restrained on his belly in the head. Yeah. And these far-right nutters like Lee Anderson and so on cheering them on. And then a few weeks later, riot, and they're arrested. No one kicked in the head. The worst anyone got was a police riot shield in their face. One guy did get a brick in the bollocks, but that wasn't the police.
That wasn't the police. It was hilarious, though.
Yes, it's his own side. And so there was you look at the sheer number, there's lots of footage, lots of arrests. I have not seen a single case of police brutality against these white rioters. Have you?
No.
And that's the two. But now it's like, the government can't talk about it, because if they talk about it, first of all, they're letting the police down at a time when actually they have been putting themselves in the firing line. But also, it then just feeds this other narrative. You end up with it being a discussion about who the police favour, white guys or coloured guys. And it's like, well, then who's going to win that argument, because who is it controls the media?
Alan the Inquirer's pointing out that Max pointed out that Labour aren't subbing universities who are losing out on foreign students. As the MP said, they're a business, they need to look at their financing. And this is a huge issue for universities, because at the moment, they don't get any extra money from the government to top up the tuition fees. So for every single British student who goes to a British university, pretty much, the university at a undergraduate level, the university loses money, and they were making up that funding by attracting students from all over the world for things like postgraduate courses, which they aren't as much anymore because they can't bring their families over with them. And there's been an active discouragement of people from other countries coming here.
The thing is, sorry.
I was just going to say, students are one of the group of people that you really want coming to your country, because they're not kids, they're coming over, they're studying, and then keep them here. But because the Tories were so obsessed with keeping that number down, well, they did two things. They made you leave as soon as you got your postgrad, which was stupid, because you should have stayed in the country, done some work, paid some tax, brilliant. The other thing they did is they made this country shit to live in, so that over 500,000 people left. And that's a good thing for them, because it brings down the net figure of people coming here. Because it was actually over 1 million people who came here, but 500,000 left. So you'll end up with 700,000 or whatever the figure was at the end of the day. They say, net migration. But that's it's lower than it would have been if they hadn't made this country such a problematic place to be right now for a lot of people, especially if you are of a minority. Johnny Copperhead, thank you very much for the super chat, mate. Farage riots. Sorry, Nigel, it slipped out. Sorry, we're not supposed to say Farage riots, Phil. We're not supposed to mention that. I mentioned it once, but I think I got away with it.
The thing about this business, though, saying universities business, which, but there's lots of other businesses as well who aren't getting that money, because they didn't just come here and pay the tuition fees.
Exactly.
They paid into local businesses.
Yeah, they wouldn't be buying a house, would they? So they'd be paying for... They'll be paying rent. They'll be on student accommodation, which they'll be paying for. They'll be buying food, takeaways, nights out, all that kind of stuff. All that is gone
as well. They'd go and enjoy some of the things that like maybe British students wouldn't as well. More of them going to like museums and things like that because it's in a different country. Of course, that's what you're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a positive thing for the country, and people keep telling me that immigration is out of control, or at least I keep hearing this. Immigration is out of control. And I'm like, what is the problem? It's a bit like saying shops are out of control. There's too many shops, Phil. Yeah. We need to shut down shops. And I'm like, well, if they're selling stuff and they're making a profit and people are happy, what's the problem with shops? I don't get it. I just do not get it. It should be a public good that people want to come here. We should be flattered that people want to come here because they see us as a safe country if they're a refugee, or they see us as a prosperous country where they can make some money if they are if they're coming here to work or to study. And isn't that what capitalism should all be about? Making your country the most attractive place for people to go to?
It doesn't matter what your politics are. If you want to, it should always be about making your country as attractive as possible. Because if it's going to be good for people to live in, then of course it's going to be an attractive prospect for others as well.
Yeah, and good and great. But whenever you ask someone what is the problem with immigration, they really struggle to give you an answer, because what they want to say is, I don't want people who don't look like me on the streets. And to be honest with you, I've seen some really minging ginger people, so I'm not bothered if there's fewer ginger people on the streets and more attractive people from other places in the world. That's just my prejudice. But, I don't necessarily want people who look like me walking around, hugging the place up. I'm going to lose a load of followers for saying that. Sorry, that was a joke. It was a joke. There's gorgeous ginger people. Karen Gillan. Yeah. Benedict Cumberbatch, he's a ginge. He's a secret ginge. He's got a rusty fuse box. Anyway, Amble Pegasus saying, I agree. If universities want funding, they should drop the private side and fall under the government. Well, that's one of the issues at the moment, isn't it?
Again, it's not the university sector for me that is the big issue. It's the fact that it is, after Brexit, one of the few growth areas of our economy that we had, and now we've put it into decline.
Yeah.
And it's something that Brexit didn't have to impact. No Brexit impact at all, because it's a completely different thing. Brexit didn't have to impact it at all. And effectively it has. Yeah. Because Brexit, even though it's
Brexit ruins everything it touches. It's like the reverse Midas touch. Anything Brexit goes near, it gets worse.
With Brexit, actually, we went from a point where we've actually got to a point where a majority in this country now see immigration as a positive contributor, whereas we sort of didn't, even though a majority also think there's there are problems with immigration. People are so inconsistent. It's like literally, it's almost, there was polling this week, almost exact, and with the same polls to YouGov, almost exactly the same percentage of people think that immigration's a problem in this country, as was specifically asked, as a result of the government's policies last year that, block independence, the number of foreign workers applying to work in health and social care in this country, so that's the NHS and care homes and things like that, has fallen compared to last June by 82%.
Wow.
And over 60% said this is bad. Yeah. So it's like pretty much the same. It won't be the same people, but must be a lot of crossover if you're talking over 60%. So the same percentage of people in this country, just over 60%, who think immigration's too high, also think, when you actually point out how immigration has collapsed in an area, instead of going, oh, good, that's a good thing, they've gone, no, that's terrible. Because that's the thing. If you actually ask people to think through the consequences of the simple ideas on immigration that Nigel Farage presents to them, it is really bad. You could say, okay, so we should have fewer doctors and nurses then, should we? We should have fewer people, running businesses. We should have fewer people working in those businesses. We shouldn't have people picking crops, because that's Trump's thing now. I was doing this thing yesterday. That's Trump's thing. He wants to deport en masse, way more than any Brexiteer wants to in this country, foreign workers, including for agriculture. So their plan is to stop American farmers being able to hire migrant work for their farms. So it's like, well, how's that going to work? You're going to produce less food. What's going to happen to you is what happened to us. You'll have crops rotting in the field because you can't get people to harvest them.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a super chat there from Brad W. Just bring it back up. Thank you very much. Saying Farage is weird. Yes, he is. And also, we've got a few comments in here talking about Cloudhorns are saying immigrants are entrepreneurs. The Tories tell us we want and need entrepreneurs. Indeed. One Angry Pagan saying we're all descended from migrants to this island. Yes, we are. Some of whom may have come across when it wasn't an island. They just walked across Doggerland when it was all covered in ice. A lot of people don't think more than one step ahead. That's why critical thinking needs to be taught in schools. I don't disagree with that at all. I was just having a look at the article, actually, the one I was referencing in the Times article. Someone's defending Mick Hucknall. I'll never forgive him for denying Pulp #1 in 1995 because he got to #1 with Fairgrounds, and I was like, no, it should have been Pulp, man. Should have been Pulp.
Well, you should have bought a few more Pulp records. It's your fault.
Record CDs, mate. I'm not that old. Anyway, so one of the protesters who's been convicted for rioting, so the rioters, I should say, not protester. She is a regular at Pride events. She's a vegan. And she was running around with an England flag around her waist, shouting at police. They get away with everything. They stabbed a soldier last week. Mental health. We aren't effing stupid. They essay our kids and murder them. And you would look at her profile and say, oh, she's a vegan. She's a member of the LGBT community. That doesn't really add up. Why has she gone over to sort of the dark side on this? And it just shows how pernicious these arguments are. And that no one's immune from them. You can't just go, oh, well, I'm on the left, so it's not going to get me. But people on the left fall for them as well.
But this is what I said earlier. The more you mistrust what you might call sort of mainstream anything, mainstream media, mainstream politics, whatever it is. You don't lock yourself away in a cave. You find some other way of getting this information. So you will inevitably end up in an echo chamber. And some of them are harmless enough. Some of them are harmless enough, but some of them are not. Some of them are filled with people who are incredibly hateful, and they will instill that hate in you. Some of them are filled with people who they know what they're doing, the likes of the Farage and Robinsons. They just want to make money out of you. They may hold these views themselves anyway, quite genuinely, but at the end of the day, you are money bags to them. And so actually,
meat bags.
Would argue people who themselves don't feel safe within the mainstream society are more likely to be radicalized. They're more vulnerable to being radicalized because they will want to find a group that says, no, you're right, we'll protect you, type of thing.
Right.
And some of them genuinely do. Some of them do, and and some are fine, and some of them are not.
Yeah.
Musk, I was just having a little chat with someone on Twitter talking about what happened to Musk, because there was a time when he actually seemed like he was quite well adjusted. And you look at him now, and it's like
ketamine. Ketamine.
You see people can be radicalized, and famous people can be radicalized. It's just sometimes a bit weird when you see it in real time, because with very famous people, you can see over a period of time. We've seen it with, I often cite someone like James Melville, who went like Russell. I was never a fan of Russell Brand as a person. And obviously some of the darker sides of his character were always there, but there were other aspects of it which have changed as well. So sometimes you've seen these famous people.
I think he's always been a grifter, though. He just thought the grift on the left was good for selling books, and then he...
But actually, just in terms of his politics, that's shifted quite a lot.
But I think that's because of what's come out about his behaviour, and he knew that was going to come out at some point. As soon as the Me Too movement started, he was like, shit, all the horrible things I've done are going to come out, and so I'm going to align myself at the right wing because they're a lot more forgiving about paedophilia than the left wing are.
But you have seen some people who just have fundamentally changed. They didn't have to.
Yeah,
they have. Yeah. And it's because you can be famous people can be radicalized as well.
Yeah.
And when they are, you see it happening as it happens.
I saw an interview with Roseanne Barr, and she was talking about, like, she's turned full Trump, full lunacy, QAnon, down the rabbit hole, taking the red pill, whatever. And she was talking about how she had lost contact with her friends and family over this. And I recall Graham Linehan talking about how his wife left him, how his children don't speak to him anymore. And it is very similar to how cults work. Cults will cut you off from your usual social group. They will cut you off from your family and say, don't talk to them anymore, because they will lead you down the wrong path. And every cult that's ever existed in the history of mankind has always done this. It's like, cut those people out your life.
And it's also on a smaller scale. It's, abusive relationships work in exactly the same way.
Yeah.
When, someone I know, not name names, that we got out of an abusive relationship. We were, just saying, they used to get quite annoyed when we would just randomly go around to the house, but it was like, well, we're doing this because you're being, and they wouldn't see that they were being abused, but afterwards they did sort of see why we had to keep going round.
Yeah.
Because that's what they were trying to do, cut them social contact.
Yeah. Yeah. That is something that
so on even not on a cult level, just on an individual.
Yeah.
It's just gaslighting.
Well, yeah, narcissists do this. They try and cut people off from their families and toxic relationships. If you have a partner who just does not want you to see your siblings or your mum, your dad, whatever, there's probably a problem there.
That should be a massive red flag. Yeah.
Yeah, massive red flag all over the place. And also there's that also feeds into jealousy and things like that. With I don't want you talking to anybody else, not even your family. You're mine now, and I own you, which is one of the more toxic things about modern relationships that happens now and again. But if it does, like Phil says, red flag, get the hell out of there. Back to the famous song the song that I think should be more famous by Tim Minchin, which is called If I Didn't Have You, I'll Probably Have Someone Else. You're getting married soon, aren't you?
Yes.
To be a little bit more romantic and less cynical for a moment. Gallifreyan Men says Badger. Question mark. Monsieur Jim Jam says Kelsey Grammer is a staunch Republican and Trump supporter, which always surprised me given his family history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you do sometimes get that. But I mean, I suppose as well in American politics, I suppose in a lot of politics, it's quite binary anyway. So it's not like, not everyone will be cookie cutter. You're essentially asking people to make a choice. And in America, it's literally a choice between two things.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't necessarily mean that someone like Kelsey Grammer really likes Trump. I don't know. He may do. I don't really go into like celebrity news, so I don't always know. Like, as far as I'm concerned, if someone's an actor, they're an actor. Can they do a good job of acting? Fine. I don't care what their politics is.
Oh, come on. No, Lawrence Fox. I mean, he can't act. He can't sing.
But I don't watch any of his shit anyway. I didn't do before he went nuts. But if I was a fan of, say, what was he in Lewis or something? If I were a fan of it, I'd still watch it. I don't care. At the end of the day, I know I'm watching a character. But I don't watch it, so it doesn't really matter. It's not really been tested.
Failed artist syndrome, mate. Failed artist syndrome.
I don't, if like Two Little Boys comes on, I don't think, oh no, I can't listen to this, Rolf Harris.
Oh, come on, it is problematic. It is problematic.
It's always problematic. You would love it if our entertainers were also nice people, but you also know they're not.
What if you had like a Rolf Harris thing that he did years ago? He did a little sketch for you and signed it. Rolf Harris. Be worthless now.
I wouldn't boast about it.
Absolutely worthless.
Well, they're all worthless. The signatures have actually got a worthless. I've got a biography signed by Tom Baker. I don't consider it to be worth anything. He just happened to be in when I bought it.
Oh, he's still alive, mate. So
well. I know he is.
Just wait. Just you wait.
I've actually got some signatures from doctors who are dead, but they'll not be worth anything either. And if they were, I don't care. It's like they're not going to be worth like ridiculous money. So
was Tom Baker nice? Was he all right?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there's a queue of people signing things. I didn't sit down and talk to him for half an hour. But his book's amazing. If you've never read it, even if you don't care about Tom Baker, the book is absolutely. He's
a secret Scouser. He was born in Kensington, I think, in Liverpool.
Incredibly interesting life though as well, which always helps with it. I don't really go for biography because I'm not into celebrity news, but it was in Manchester. I was at university at the time. He was literally in there saying, I thought, well, I might as well. I was a Doctor Who fan. But the book is actually really good.
Well, I met Sylvester McCoy when I was in Manchester Uni. And I feel like you got the better Doctor. I'm sorry, Sylvester.
No, I prefer Sylvester McCoy's Doctor.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I loved his Doctor.
There's too many Scottish doctors. We have a Scottish Doctor every other Doctor. There's too many of them. We need more Scouse doctors like Tom Baker and Paul McGann. Anyway, Sarah's saying Scottish doctors.
Oh yeah, well, David Tennant, but he did.
David Tennant.
He put on his accent, didn't he? Yeah.
Ncuti Gatwa. Then you've got.
I haven't seen any of the newer stuff there.
Yeah. Peter Capaldi. Sylvester McCoy. He's Scottish. That's four of them at least.
I haven't seen the newer stuff. And David Tennant, yeah, you're right. But he put on a silly English accent. So.
A silly English accent. God damn you.
Very good. It's very good quality, but nonetheless, I didn't see the need for it.
I liked the line when Christopher Eccleston played the Doctor and she said, "You're from another planet. Oh, yeah. How come you sound like you're from up north?" And he said, "Because other planets have norths."
Yeah.
Alan the Inquirer says, JKR wrote a children's series of books that became popular with adults. It was they who read more adult themes into it. Yeah, maybe. But I mean, as a creative myself, when I write stuff, I usually put some underlying metaphors or messages in there for people to pick up on. I know they go over the kids' heads, but there's a subtext that I want to get through to people. I put it in there, and I'm sure she did too. There's a lot in Harry Potter that's about World War II. It's it's rising up against effectively Wizard Hitler.
Well, there's lots of things from her like personal past and stuff like that in it as well. We know about that.
Yeah.
Again, someone else who seems to have gone down a bit of a rabbit hole.
Oh God, yeah, she's well. Let's talk about her in a moment because I've something interesting to say. Well, I think it's interesting. Brad W, thank you very much for the super chat. If Putin's deposed while Phil's getting married, we'll have to delay his honeymoon till the US election so Trump doesn't win either.
There's no honeymoon. We don't go on holiday. I'll be having a day off. That's
A
it.
day off.
A day off to get married.
Oh, so will you be available on the day before? Could we do a swap? Because I'm supposed to be going to a theme park with the kids.
Oh yeah, in the morning I should be fine. I may have other
Yes.
things I'm supposed to do in the evening to calm.
Oh, thanks, Phil. I thought I was like cutting into your wedding week by asking you to do morning brew.
I'm not spending the whole week on the wedding.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Anyway, my job. I booked the wedding and got the rings. My job beyond that was just to get clothes to wear.
Yeah. Fair enough. So just to mention J.K. Rowling, who has completely, when we talk about rabbit holes and someone who was, I thought she was great doing the whole Harry Potter stuff. She got an entire generation of children excited about books. They would queue up outside Waterstones, outside Dillon's, if that was still around in the late 90s, waiting for the new book to come out, which is fantastic. You don't really see that. I didn't see that at all when I was a kid, and I didn't really see it even when Roald Dahl books were coming out. I remember when Matilda was published, and I was dead excited about it, but like, it wasn't a queue up Gold Street.
I agree. Yeah, there's nothing like that when I was growing up.
And then she wrote some really good articles where she was talking about things like why she stays in the UK and pays tax here, because she was a single mum and she benefited from the state looking after people who had fallen on hard times, and that allowed her to write Harry Potter. And if she hadn't had that, great, awesome. During the Brexit wars, she was on our side. She said that Brexit is a stupid idea and it's going to make us poorer. And then one day she went down this rabbit hole of, I just hate trans people. That she just decided that one day. Well, she tried to pretend for a while that it wasn't about hating trans people. It was about women's rights.
That's the gateway drug there. It's like, toilets. Toilets is the gateway drug.
Toilets are the gateway drug. Just like with cottaging. But I mean, after the last couple of weeks where she is misgendered very publicly, bullied, cyber harassed, Imani Khalif from Algeria, the boxer who went on to win gold at the Olympics. She's been very quiet. I don't think she's tweeted since. I didn't check today, but I don't think she's tweeted since. I think someone's had a word with her.
Not necessarily. As she's specifically named in legal papers, she'll just be getting legal advice on it. That'll be all that is.
Someone suggested that Imani should be given a second gold medal for shutting J.K. Rowling up.
Unfortunately, it's not an Olympic sport. That'd be quite a...
No, I didn't say Olympic medal. I just said a gold medal. She should be given a gold medal for doing that. One Angry Pagan, Fantastic Mr. Fox is my favourite Roald Dahl book. Now, Roald Dahl, problematic. He was very anti-Semitic.
Yeah, that's the thing, you see. There were these issues where you can talk about almost anything. If you look at any well-liked anything, you could trace back its history and find something really unpleasant. So you do have to have a certain separation.
David Bowie, John Lennon, Gaddafi. No, Gandhi.
Well, say Gaddafi. There's not a lot of positive.
Mohandas Gandhi. He had some problematic things that went on in his life. Obviously, Mother Teresa, famously. And yeah, there are people. Here you go. Top tip: don't put anyone on a pedestal.
I mean, it's the way
inevitably let you down.
You know, if you think about Navalny, for example, in Russia, and this is where I think Amnesty International got themselves into a mess, because obviously he was standing up as effectively this bulwark of some slender link of democracy in Russia. So he's standing against Putin. So obviously he's naturally the sort of person, he's the only person that could have, and we all knew what would happen to him, of course, because Putin won't allow it. It's what happens to anyone who could realistically get a group of people around them to replace him.
Yeah.
So it was always going to go the way he went. But nonetheless, he became this sort of icon against Putin's dictatorship. But then Amnesty International had to sort of drop him because it said some shit things in the past. Yeah. And it's I can't remember whether it was something that was misogynistic or racist or whatever. And it's but so you have to sort of see, just seeing people as either good or bad, you have to sort of see some people, it's okay, well, that's shit and this is not. And I liken it to when you're a teacher, you're sort of trained to focus on the behavior. So when you got a kid, are you always picking on me? So you don't like me. And you're supposed to say, no, I do like you. What I don't like is this behavior. And it's why when they exhibit the good behavior, which can for them just be sitting down for 5 minutes without being a dick, you praise them. So you're emphasizing this fact, this behavior bad, this behavior good. But you are a person, and you can choose whether to be a good person, do more of the good behavior, or a bad person, do more of the bad behavior. And sort of separating out the specific behavior from the person, I think, is quite important. Otherwise, you end up in a mess. You end up in a position where, it's almost like with some people, if someone does absolutely anything that you don't like or you think is bad, then they're a bad person. And I don't think it's all that healthy. I mean, some things are really bad. Like if someone murders someone, okay, they're quite in cold blood, then they're quite bad, I think. Or if someone commits some other terrible crime. But by and large, you just have to separate it out.
Yeah. So I just had to get rid of a troll off the channel. Sorry about that, everyone. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, Leaf Huntress. But yeah, with J.K. Rowling, I one of the things that I feel, what I was going to say about the difference between her and, say, for instance, Roald Dahl, is that Roald Dahl is dead. He is not currently going on Twitter every day and targeting a vulnerable minority and making their lives an active misery. If he was, I might feel a bit differently about going to see the new Willy Wonka film or going to, watch Matilda the musical or whatever. With J.K. Rowling accepting what she's, I see like going to see the new Fantastic Beasts films as accepting her bigotry, because she's going to be making money out of that.
Well, but that's the thing. So this is then where you get, and obviously people, I have I boycott some things, and some other people.
What do you boycott? Go on. What do you boycott? I want your silly
Weatherspoons. Weatherspoons and Apple are top of the list.
Oh wow!
We
hate Apple. Well. We hate Apple on this channel. Sod it.
I also boycott Warburtons, which is a bit of a bugger because they advertise on GB. So until I learn they don't advertise on GB News, they're boycotted. Kellogg's I had to boycott recently because they specifically advertise on Nigel Farage's show. Again, until I hear otherwise, then that's boycotted. Dyson, Dyson, I've got a Dyson fan that next works perfectly well. I'm not throwing it out, but I'm not buying any more new Dyson products.
Oh, I hate my Dyson. We've got a new one. We've got a Shark now. And the Dyson lives in the garage. Well, we don't have a garage, the outhouse. I hate it. It's a brick. It's an absolute, it's more than a brick. It weighs an absolute ton and makes so much noise. It's a badly put together piece of shit. And I hate it.
What is?
The Dyson vacuum cleaner that we've got. It's so noisy. Like Dyson seems to me like an inventor, but it reminds me of Bart Simpson. With when he had the flashback to when he was a little boy, and he had a saucepan on his head and he was banging it with a spoon, going, "Look at me, look at me, look at me." All of his products are obnoxiously loud.
No, I like this. This fan works really well. It works better than any fan I've ever had. But it doesn't matter if it broke and I couldn't fix it, and I can't fix anything. Let's be honest. I wouldn't get another Dyson, so I would not get another Dyson product unless he decided to stop being a knob. Yeah. Which I don't think he's going to be. Now,
no.
But in terms of your specific thing, so you're saying, you're giving money to J.K. Rowling if you go along. You can see that argument. But then does that mean, let's say, because you talk about, say, Roald Dahl being dead. So let's say there was someone who was actually just an all-round good guy and you can't find anything bad about them. And that's actually probably really rare because
I was going to say.
Even H.G. Wells was in favour of eugenics. But I still read his book.
Now you've ruined all the worlds for me. No, I'm Time Machine. I
mean, the thing is as well, the longer ago they lived, the more likely you are to find something very unpleasant about them. Yeah. But, let's say you had someone who was like, angelic almost, but they died. And you're going along to see the latest film, but let's say their descendants, who that money's now going to, let's say they're all racist pigs. Do you think? I mean, how deeply are you going to think about it?
Well, yeah, but okay, all right. Well, that's one thing that could be happening. However, in the case of J.K. Rowling, she was going on Twitter pretty much every day to say horrible things about trans people. Like, I can't get past that. I'm sorry, you're not going to get any of my money. And I'm kind of, in a way, I'm glad that the Fantastic Beasts films just got worse and worse, and the last one It is an absolute mess. I can proudly say I did not pay to go and see it at the cinema or watch it on TV. But it's like Star Wars Episode 1, mate. It is a lesson in how not to make a coherent film. I know you're going to defend Star Wars Episode 1 now.
Only the beginning. The beginning is superb. I was so excited. It was amazing.
Trade routes.
Well, no, it's just
diplomatic mission.
It was just Jedi at their height, and it was superb.
Yes.
And then it went down.
And they were stupid Jedi. Oh, we can't see what's going on in front of us because the dark side is clouding everything.
Oh, not even that. It's even when... Oh, sorry.
Does the dark side make you stupid, does it, Phil? Is that what it does?
It's a standoff. They had said, it's a standoff with these droids. No, it's not. You're deflecting their bolts. Move closer to them and smash their shield generators.
Yeah. By the way, Sfax is defending you, saying it wasn't Phil who ruined it, but HG himself. So, yeah. God damn you, H.G. Wells. I should dig you up and kill you again. And Alan Inquirer saying, I think social media / peer pressure has increased the loss of nuance. I think that's true as well, because I think people like to be in a particular camp. And I get that if you're in, say, our camp, you tend to be more progressive. You tend to think there's no problem with immigrants. You tend to think that, we should all get along, I guess. So there's a bunch of things that
call... Plenty of people there that don't want people to get along. There's hate and toxicity everywhere.
No, but I'm talking about, like, say, this channel, for instance, and our regulars in the chat there, our socialites. I think that it does seem like it comes as a bit of a package deal. Yeah, that's someone new. They've not been on here before. But no, it comes across as
one of us.
No, they're not one of us. They're one of the others. But yeah, they were, the out group. But I am really liking what I'm hearing from America right now, because I think that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are really, really trying to push this narrative of there's more that unites us than divides us, which I think they nicked off Jo Cox. I don't think she was the first to say it, but
I suspect not.
Obviously famous for that. And I like that. I like the idea that we can go back to the time when we could have different political positions, but they weren't so entrenched and they weren't so violent. They weren't so black and white. All these people are bad. All these people are good.
Because it is more nuanced than that. You can't engage with someone by telling them that they're stupid or a terrible person or someone. If you want to get consensus, you have to talk to people, and part of that means you have to listen as well. You have to be willing to listen to them without then instantly saying, no, you're a terrible person for thinking that. It's much better, I think, like coming back to the immigration thing, to use these arguments. Okay, so this is your position. So what would you want to do? You'd want to do this. Okay, so the consequence of this, and you just follow step by step and say, are you sure this is what you want to do? That is how an argument can work, as opposed to just saying, no, you're just a racist. Because even if it's true, you're not going to increase the net number of people we're not going to move on in terms of immigration until we've got more people thinking like more realistically about immigration. Because at the moment, people just see immigration as a single figure, and they think of it in terms of taking resources. They don't think of it in terms of contributing those resources. They don't see that. They think that we've got a net number of resources and people come into the country, therefore taking those resources. They don't see, no, actually they're bringing those, they are the resource, they're creating productivity, and a lot of what we produce in this country, the raw materials don't come from this country anyway. So and it's so until we get people thinking in those terms, we're not going to move on, and we're not going to get people thinking in those terms by leaving it to others, because the others are the media.
We got a super chat from Alex saying, more that unites us than divides us. Is a quote from Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Sorry, not sorry. Fair enough. It was good when it came out before the author went mad. And Sarah's making this point again and again, saying rights are not a camp. No, I don't mean that they're a camp. I meant, sorry if I misspoke, I seem to have upset you. I meant that the people who believe in rights for all minorities are a group. Like, that's a group of people who believe in those things and tend to believe in rights for animals, safe as well, and freedom of movement, and tend to be of a mindset of freedom and live and let live, I guess. Whereas the other side want to monitor you, police you, want to tell you how to live your life and what you're allowed to do in the bedroom and what you're allowed to do with your own body. And yeah, they're the people who I find rather problematic. And time again, we see that the people leading the ordinary people into the jaws of incarceration, let's put it that way, tend to be millionaires and billionaires who don't get their hands dirty. But in the last couple of weeks, with the good chance that Tommy 10 Names is going to get done for instigation of riots,
so, but,
and J.K. Rowling might get done for cyberbullying.
I'm less convinced about that one. I'd need to see, I think, legal experts weigh up that one, because that sounds tricky to me.
Well, no, because it's a French court,
I get
right?
That. Yeah.
But they can ask the British or the English police or the Scottish police, I guess, for J.K. Rowling to look into it, to whether it be worth bringing charges against in the jurisdiction of Scotland as part of the overarching investigation in France. So we'll see. Sarah saying, I feel I'm watching trans support drifting away in real time simply through talk and clever fence sitting. We don't sit on the fence on this channel, Sarah. We're very proud to be allies of trans people, and we talk about it a lot. So I'm sorry if I offended you by saying what I said earlier about people who believe in rights, or maybe I misspoke. But I genuinely believe that this channel is a force for good when it comes to all minority rights, not least that of trans people who have just had a hell of a time of it over the last 10 years for no reason whatsoever, except rich people are bored and they need a new plaything.
There is a reason. And that reason, it's specifically it's the same thing. It's the same reason why you have this mad situation where as many people think immigration's too high, but when you point out immigration collapsing somewhere like the NHS, they think that's bad. And it's because it's in the interest of this small number of billionaires who control our media to persuade you that your problems are down to this small minority group, as opposed to it is a small minority group that's causing their problems. It's them.
Yeah.
So it's deliberate. It's deliberate. Trans issues have been a thing thousands of years. Transsexuals have existed for thousands of years, and yet in terms of like modern trans issues have been around for decades, and yet there's been ridicule, there's been lack of understanding, there's been a lack of sympathy to a certain extent, but there's not been this vitriol until literally the last few years. It's been manufactured. Nothing happened a few years ago to trigger it. It was deliberately manufactured.
Anyway, right, we're going to have to leave it there because I've got to jump on a train to Liverpool to get there in time to be on the Politics Social at 9:00 tonight. So I've got to take all my studio down, put it in a box, take it to Liverpool, set it all up again, and get going. So hopefully the train's not going to be late. But I'll see everyone, hopefully, watching at 9:00 tonight, where we can discuss these issues further and have a good laugh at some of the daft things that have happened this week, not least of which was Liz Truss having a sign come down behind her saying that she crashed the economy with the lettuce, and her saying that's not funny when it demonstrably was. Wrong again, Liz. Wrong again. David Faulkner, thank you very much for the 38 Hong Kong dollars. It's very kind of you. A healthy population should never be viewed as a burden, only a resource to the nation. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Anyway, so thank you very much for watching. Thanks to Phil for being here. Cheers, Phil, and imparting your wisdom. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Thanks for the super chats. Give us a like on the way out. And until next time, we'll say, hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.